A very good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you are doing well, and also at the very same time, I hope that you are keeping yourself safe and sound. Now, as the COVID restrictions they have eased up a bit, okay, the university is moving towards the second phase of reopening the campuses. In that case, what happens is students who have labs which are yet to be conducted by their lecturers, students who wish to use the library, they are allowed in the campuses provided they are fully vaccinated. Now, for our case, for CIN535, okay, we will not be going through a lab class because we have basically covered most of the work. The only thing we are left with is CSS. Apart from that, the week 5 lecture on designing and producing. This is the very last set of lecture that you have for this semester. Now we were quite ahead in our syllabus. We have gone quite fast. I give the honors and thanks to you because at times we had right at the very beginning our lectures went on straight full force from about 1.5 hours to 2 hours. So I have to thank you for keeping up with me. Now for whatever is remaining, we are left with CSS and we are left with building a complete website. Those are two things that are remaining for the semester. Also to know that you do not have a final examination, therefore there's no need for us to go over revisions. However, in week 13, you are supposed to go over a short test which carries 10% towards your coursework. Now that is something that will be coming up next week's class or next week, and in next week's class most likely I will be giving you time to revise for your exams and attend your quiz, the short test too. Lab class will be as normal. We will be going over CSS, okay, and we will be trying to learn how to go around styling up our HTML and styling up our web pages. So any questions, any queries from anyone? There's two of you joined us, so thank you very much for joining in. Those of you who are watching the recording a bit later onwards, I thank you for your time and for your efforts as well. Now, while you're working on that, and we'll be discussing the lecture notes, also note that your website development project, which carries 20% towards the coursework, okay, is also due on the 31st of October. So 31st of October is 2 weeks from now. Okay, so this is when it is due. So next week is week 13, week 14, week 16 is the very last week of the semester. Now, if I will try to reconsider if I should extend it for another week, considering that you have a short test 2 coming up. So I'll let you know accordingly. At the moment, the date stands as it is. So if there will be any changes, I will update you on that in next week's class. All right. So without further delays, let's go and hop into our lecture notes. We have posted about 30 to 35 slides. So we'll go over them, and then it should last for about, the class should be there for about 1 to 1.5 hours. Now, the very last set of lecture notes is on designing and producing. These are all the different types of things that you need to cater when you are actually designing a multimedia project. So overview, okay, designing a multimedia project and producing a multimedia project. Now, sometimes instead of the word producing, many people use the word building or developing. Now, designing and producing, they mean two different things. Designing is just like a logical model, something that you have put up on paper, something that you have designed up on a software, but it's not the actual thing. When I say design up in a software, let's say you're making a website, so you make a plan of that website, a storyboard of that website in Microsoft Word. So that becomes a logical model. So when you produce it, it becomes a physical model. A physical model is something that you were supposed to do in actual, and you're doing it. For example, creating a website or creating a banner or a poster and so forth. Designing a multimedia project. Designing and building multimedia projects go hand in hand. Now, why hand in hand? Because whatever things you plan up for, whatever things you're planning and whatever things you do in the design, the same things you will build it up. For instance, if you are designing a storyboard or you're designing a model of how you're going to make a website, so you use that model as a guide and get the complete website done. Now, balance proposed changes against their costs. Feedback loops and good communication between the design and the production efforts are critical to the success of a project. Now, we need to balance all the proposed changes and their costs. Let's say you are in the middle of making a website and your website goes through a major change. Okay, so you need to ensure and see whether it meets up the costs or not. Okay, now you must be thinking designing website does not take a lot of costs. It does take a lot of costs. How? Because if you were, let's say, if you are just a consultant who's making a website, you have 3 or 4 projects piled up, so you're doing one after the other. So if there's some major changes comes up with the website and you choose a certain portion of the other project, so what happens in this case, in that particular case, is that you may end up losing time. Moreover, if you delay too much, you may end up losing the other project too. So you need to be very, very careful when you are trying to get some form of proposed changes done. Moreover, apart from this, there's resource consumption. You're using electricity, you're using hardware, using software. What if your software is subscribed for a month only? Then how are you going to balance it? So this is what is very crucial when you are designing and building a multimedia project. Feedback loops and good communication. We talk about feedback is just about when you are designing a website, when you're building it, at each and every stage, it's always good to get some form of feedback from a client who you're making the website for, or sometimes the users even. So you get a good set of feedback loops. Okay, so you are able to get those feedbacks, and according to your feedbacks, you are able to implement some form of changes. Now, not major changes, but minor changes, because all these changes or all these requirements had to be catered in the very first designing stage. Designing a multimedia project continued. A user either can describe the project in minute detail or can build a less detailed storyboard and spend more time in actually rendering the project. The method chosen depends upon the scope of a project, the size and the style of the team, and whether the same people will do the development and design. If the design team is separate from the development team, it is best to produce a detailed design first. Now, generally, let's say if you are working in an organization and that organization has asked you to create a website, okay, so you are the designer, you are the developer, okay, or you are the builder, so you need to ensure you need to spend more time in rendering the project, in actually building the thing, rather than you designing too much. Why? Because after all, you are the person who is going to design and build it. You have a basic idea in your mind, you get a less detailed storyboard done, and once you're done with it, you spend more time or actual time in getting the project done, the physical motor done. Okay, and there are different ways in which you can, or different methods you can use, or you can go around tackling your project. In some method you may need less design and more of building. In other methods you need to put in equal design, and sometimes in some cases you need to put in more detail into this design. This can be very much applicable when the design team and the building team, they're completely different. And many organizations, they have it whereby the graphic designer ends up doing this designing part, and the builder may be somebody else, the developer. So what happens is when the designer actually lays out the design, probably you need to be available, and moreover the person who is designing it has to have some basic website development skills. Why? Because not everything is, you just cannot do almost anything with a website. Okay, there are certain limitations with what things you can do. So therefore, okay, in that case you need to be available, or the graphic designer need to have basic knowledge in website development. For instance, if you happen to be the designer, okay, so once you go through the entire BSc CSIS program, not only you know a bit about graphics, or you know a lot about graphics, you also know quite a lot about website development as well. So you have a basic idea in your mind what things are possible and what things are not possible. Designing a multimedia project requires knowledge and skill with computers, talent in graphics, art, video, and music, and the ability to conceptualize logical pathways. Designing involves thinking, choosing, making, and doing. Now, the first point if you would actually try to summarize it up, that summarizes CIN535, multimedia and communications, whereby you've worked with a bit of graphics, you've learned about art, you've learned about video, you've learned about music, and you also learn about website development. Okay, now about in terms of video and music, we didn't do too much on it due to the COVID-19 restrictions. However, if you, those are very simple things to learn. Even if you know the very little basics of all those things, you can go around doing things. And I think with the current technology, creating a new video, embedding sound in the background, editing music, editing sound has not become, it is not a difficult thing. In fact, it has become very, very easy over the period of time. Okay, and finally, when you're designing, it involves thinking, choosing, making, and doing. Okay, a lot of thinking, especially. Why? Because obviously you want your multimedia project to be something out of the box. One. Two, you want it to be effective. Three, you want it to serve the purpose it is being created for. If you create a banner and you took about 6 months to create a banner and the banner is of no use, then all that 6 months with the time and the money invested is just a waste. Designing the structure, the manner in which project material is organized has just as great an impact on the viewer as the content itself. Mapping the structure of a project should be done early in the planning stage. Okay, it's just like when you are designing your multimedia project, you should design the structure. Now over here, there are very different types of structures you can apply. For example, if you're doing a banner, okay, there's a different structure of its own. If you're doing a music video, that's something else. If you're doing a YouTube video, that's something else, has a different structure. If you're making a website, it has a different structure. So all these are different varied levels of structures. Sometimes an organization uses all these different types of multimedia elements to motivate and to promote their businesses. So you need to ensure that you are getting the structure up on hand. So when you're talking about the structure, it's more like how your entire multimedia project is going to be designed, how it is going to be framed up. Okay, now navigation maps are also known as site maps. In fact, yeah, there are probably two different things altogether. What now people see it is two different things. Okay, but in fact, they are same. When you talk about navigation maps, a navigation map is just like when you're on a website, you have sections like home, about us, contact us, services, and all sorts of all those links up there right underneath the banner of your website. Now those are called navigation links. They allow you to navigate, that means go back and forth on a website. A site map can be a navigation map or a navigation bar, or it can be a separate page altogether which gives the entire structure of the website. That means from home you can go and click on products. So when you click on products, what all things are there in the products page and where does those things lead to in the other parts of the website. So those are site maps. Previously, a few years back, a website used to come with a separate site map. So right at the very bottom of the screen, you would see a section, you'll see a link called site map. And when you click on it, it will show the entire page and the entire connection of the website. You have a home page, products, services, about us, contact us, and where it leads to. So when you click on any of those links, it will directly drop you into that website. To help organize the content and messages, navigation maps provide a hierarchical table of contents and a chart of the logical flow of the interactive interface. Navigation maps are essentially non-linear. So when you talk about non-linear, that means there's no proper flow, or you can say there's no proper structure. Sometimes, okay, the opposite of non-linear is linear, whereby you have to follow a structure, you have to follow a series of steps to get something done. Non-linear is what we do in these days, whereby when you open a website, you are given the choice to click on whichever particular link that you want to, or page that you want to. If I have to explain linear, now let's say sometimes you're playing games, so unless and until you go through a series of tutorial, it wouldn't allow you to go and play the game. So it forces the user to do something. Those examples of linear navigation maps. Okay, now there are four fundamental organization structures. Linear, users navigate sequentially, one after the other. from one frame of information to another. Hierarchical users navigate along the branches of a tree structure that is shaped by the natural logic of the content. It is also called linear with branching. So hierarchical, whereby users, they actually follow a particular branch. Remember I was telling you, you have home page and then products. So if you're selling clothing items, so underneath the products, you'll have probably shirts, trousers, okay, and the other type of clothing items. So those will be laid out in branches, which we don't follow it to that standard these days. Normally we use something called as non-linear, or there's another one called composite. Now, non-linear users navigate freely through the content unbound by predetermined routes. That means there is no sequential order to it. Composite, it's very much similar to non-linear. However, it has certain linear constraints to it as well. For instance, if you want to go and see the shipment of an item, unless and until you select the item, unless and until you choose how many, or unless and until you're paid, you cannot go and see the shipment cost of that item. I'm just giving an example. Those are example of composite, whereby you are free to choose whichever item you want to, but certain aspects, there are a set of sequence need to be followed. And you're giving the structure. Now look at linear, one after the other. Hierarchical, okay, it's also part of linear, but it gives a sense of structure to it. Non-linear, okay, you can navigate freely where you want to. Now composite, if you look at composite, now these are linear, okay, one after the other, okay, and these are also linear, and the rest become non-linear. So linear, sequence based. Hierarchical users can actually go and users can actually navigate the pages with bit of linear elements. Non-linear users are given the free option to go and click and navigate to the multimedia project however they want to. Composite is a combination of linear and non-linear structure. Designing the structure. The navigation system should be designed in such a manner that viewers are given free choice. The architectural drawings for a multimedia project are storyboards and navigation maps. Storyboards are linked to navigation maps during the design process and help to visualize the information architecture. Now, we've already gone over such kind of topics. So storyboard, like I've been mentioning for quite a number of weeks now. Remember the newspaper article right at the very back, you had a cartoon structure, okay? Now, you don't have those cartoons in your multimedia project. It's just that you use a similar set of cubes or squares and get the structure of your multimedia project done in those cubes. So this is what happens when you click on the home page. After that, this is what are all the contents of the About Us page. These are all the contents of services and so forth. Hotspots. Okay, now we have learned about this. Hotspots, there are three types. You have text, graphic, and icons. What do? They allow interactivity to a multimedia project. That means it allows a good set of communication between you and the multimedia project itself. Now, there are three categories of hotspots, and these are text, graphics, and icons. Text, when you click on the text, it takes you to another page. Just like how we have links. Graphics, you have an image, okay, a big image. And these images, when you click on it, either it allows a set of activities to take place, one or two. What activities? For example, it makes it bigger in size, enlarges the image. Or two, it takes you to another page. And finally, we have icons. Icons are much more smaller bitmap graphics, and these graphics allow you to jump from one page to the other. They add it to the navigation system. The simplest hotspots on the web are the text anchors that link a document to other documents. Okay, we have already we have started working with links. Okay, remember ALT, the A tags, anchor tags. Okay, and this is how you link one document to another. We can link pictures. You can link even into sound. Okay, there are many ways you can do linking on our website. Hyperlinks, a hotspot that connects a viewer to another part of the same document or different document or another website, and is called a hyperlink. You know what it is. Image maps, larger images that are sectioned in hotspot areas with associated links and are called image maps. So image maps are very much example of site maps. So with site maps, it's just that you have a set of text, and when you click on the text, it takes you to another page. Image map is you have an image, okay? Instead of text, you have an image. So when you click on that image, it takes you off to another page. Icons are fundamental graphic objects symbolic of an activity or concept. Buttons, a graphic image that is a hotspot, is called a button. You know what buttons are. See here, you have a navigation bar, okay? And this is all the options that you have in a navigation bar. So when you click on it, it takes you to another page. These are examples of hyperlinks. Plugins such as Flash, Shockwave, or JavaScript enable users to create plain or animated buttons. Nowadays, we don't need plugins. Plugins are basically a third-party software, and it is normally hooked up to a website. Nowadays, we don't use that anymore. Okay, previously you had to download plugin extensions to make certain elements work. For instance, if you embed a video in your website, you need a Flash Player plugin. Okay, nowadays we don't have it because the web browsers, okay, for web browsers, examples are Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Opera, and so forth. They have built-in plugins for video playing nowadays. Small JPEG or GIF images that are themselves anchor links can also serve as buttons on the web. Okay, like I mentioned, you can also add links to images. We will be doing it in next week's class sometime. Not tomorrow's left. Tomorrow's left, we're working with CSS basic components, but in next week's class, we'll work on those things. Highlighting a button is the most common method of distinguishing it. In other words, how do you know that a text is different from a button? Okay, is either you have a button frame to it, let's say a rectangular or circular frame to it, or sometimes you have a different color, highlighted color to the text. So that's how you normally go around distinguishing that either that is a normal text or if that would be a link. Okay, now these are examples of image map. Okay, now you must have seen this in games or somewhere. Okay, so if I would take my cursor on this particular spot, and the name will pop up. So when I click on it, it takes me to that particular page. Likewise, if I would go and take my cursor on another of those, okay, image, it will take me to another location. So those are examples of image maps. By the way, these are not easy to create, by the way. Okay, they are embedded with a set of JavaScript coding. So when you roll your mouse over the house or over any of those features, a content would pop up. When you click on it, it takes you to those locations. Now, these are normally nowadays used in games. Now, remember, games can also be a multimedia project, by the way. It is essential to follow accepted conventions for button design and grouping, visual and audio feedback, and navigation structure. Avoid hidden commands and unusual keystroke or mouse click combinations. Now, when you talk about following essential accepted conventions, it's just like using the usual stuffs. Okay, if you create a button which is very much out of the ordinary stuff, and users may not be able to recognize them, so try to ensure that you use it in such a way so that people are able to recognize that this is what you mean. Okay, so your button should look like a button. All right, your button should not look like an image. For example, look at what you see in the images. Now, this would look like a plain old image. However, this may sort of look like a certain button, but it's not beveled much as a button. Beveled, you know, your button seems a bit raised. It has a sort of a shadow floating at the bottom and on top, or probably on the sides. So you're not able to see all those things. Another thing is avoid hidden commands. Now, if you are intending to move your career somewhat towards a web specialist or something related to website development, you do need to know this, is that when you use a lot of hidden commands, you can have hidden commands, by the way, when we're doing, when you're working on our labs, I will let you know how you can use hidden commands. If you're using a lot of hidden commands and mouse clicks in your website, so it may cause problem on a search engine. A search engine may exempt your website, or it may ban your website on Google search because you may be using hidden commands. Now, why it bans you? Because of using hidden commands, because that's how viruses actually work. Okay, they're hidden. Designing the user interface. The user interface of a project is a blend of its graphic element and its navigation system. User interface, whatever you see on the screen. Now, whatever you see on the screen is just graphics, but whatever you see on the screen and also you are able to communicate with it, you are able to do something with it, those are called user interface. Example, how you use Microsoft Word. So whatever buttons you're seeing, it is an example of user interface. So you're able to communicate with Microsoft Word. The simplest solution for handling varied levels of user expertise is to provide a model interface. In a modal interface, the viewers can simply click a novice or expert button and change the approach of the whole interface. So a modal interface is used to cater for a very new user or a very expert user. So when you click on that button, it switches up. Now, once it switches, what happens is with a novice user, things will be very simple. But with an expert user, what happens in that case is that things would be in terms of using shortcuts. Things would be written at a probably a level up compared to what a new user would expect. Okay, so modal interface. Modal interfaces are not suitable for multimedia projects. Why? Because the entire purpose of multimedia project is then lost. Why? Because with multimedia projects, your major purpose is to attract people. Okay, it also is used in promotions and stuff. So if you are doing promotion, if you're doing advertising, you are not only catching your experienced customers, but you're also catching up onto new customers as well. So it may not be preferred, or it may not be suitable. The solution is to build a project that can contain plenty of navigation power, which provides access to content and tasks for users at all levels. The interface should be simple and user-friendly. Okay, so if your interface in overall way, if it's very simple and it is user-friendly, that means users are able to use it. Even a new user would come in and would perform the same as some person who has been using for about a year or so. That indicates that your entire user interface is very, very simple, okay, and user-friendly. Graphical user interface. GUI, okay, graphical user interface, also called as interface as we call it. The graphical user interface of Macintosh and Windows are successful due to their simplicity, consistency, and ease of use. GUIs offer built-in help systems and provide standard patterns of activity that produce the standard expected results. Okay, now, the reason being why you're able to use a computer very, very easily. If you are very new to it, you can even go around doing things, or you can make your way learning it on your own. Why? Because the entire graphical user interface is very simple. Moreover, you'll see there's a certain level of consistency. If you use Windows 96, which is very, very old, and even if you use Windows 10, you won't see much. You will see changes, or most likely with the graphics, but apart from that, the structure, the framework still remains the same. Same thing with Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel. Now, I've used the 96, 94, even 92 version of Microsoft Word, okay? And if we use what you are using now, probably the interface has changed a bit. Probably the graphic level has upped or amped up to a much more higher level. But here's the thing. Apart from that, the structure remains the same. You can still type, you can still make things bold, you can still apply some form of formatting on it, you can still apply some form of styling to it, and so forth, and probably some new features which you could make your way through it. Now, graphical approaches that work. Plenty of non-information areas or white space in the screen. Neatly executed constraints, gradients, shadows, eye grabbers. So these are some of the things that could actually work. Okay, something that is eye-catching, something that looks neat, something that is able to give ambience of color, and moreover, you know, there are maybe some non-information areas or white space in the screen. Now, why do you need white space? This is something that separates one content from the other. Moreover, apart from that, there are some places whereby you might see the website is completely centered, and on the sides there are empty white space. Now, it may give a better look to a website than having the entire website filled up with text. Things to avoid: clashes of colors or not using proper blend of colors. Busy screens. When we talk about busy screens, that means the entire screen space has something in it. There's hardly any gap. Requiring more than 2 button clicks to quit. Okay, now this is not followed these days, but previously we had a section. We had a feature whereby users would make a lot of mistakes. Now I remember Microsoft Word previously had this option whereby when you click on close, and if your document you have not saved it, it will close instantly. Whereas these days, when you close and you have not saved something, it will prompt you up, give you a message prompt in a box that, okay, do you wish to save the changes? Something like that. Previously, it didn't have that. So what they did, they wanted users to double click. Now that becomes very monotonous. 1, 2, it becomes irritating over time. Okay, too many numbers and words, too many substantive element presented too quickly. How many people ever tried reading right at the very end of a movie, who all people were in the production process, who all people were in the designing process, and who all people did what with that movie? It becomes very difficult to read. I'm not able to read most of the time because it goes away so quickly. And the reason being why it goes away so quickly, because there may be unnecessary stuffs. People hardly read them, that's why. But there are sometimes you may want to read things, okay? But with multimedia projects, if you're designing something for advertising, please give adequate time to people, to your audience, to read the content very, very properly and adequately. Audio interface. A multimedia user interface can include sound elements. Sounds can be background music, special effects for button clicks, voiceovers, effects synced to animation. Always provide a toggle switch to disable sound. Last option, sorry, the last point, a toggle switch. Toggle switch is whereby you can switch something on and off. Now, why do you want it? Not all people find it comfortable. For instance, if I go into my preferred choice, I prefer more of a silent website than of a noisy website. Okay, why? Because some people are not able to read things well. When there's sound, it acts like a distraction to them. So when you are creating a multimedia project, likewise, you need to ensure the same, that you have to provide a option to the user to either switch on or switch off sound. Now, in the development or the production phase, the project plan becomes the systematic instruction manual for building the project. Like mentioned earlier, whatever is in the plan, the design, that goes in the building phase. The production stage requires a good organization and detailed management oversight during the entire construction phase. Now, this is what we normally call it as quality standards. Why quality standards or quality improvisations? Why do we call it that? Because normally when you are creating a multimedia project, there needs to be an external party, probably another person who would need to go and oversight things. Now, sometimes things may look good to you. It may not look good to others. Sometimes things may look bad for you, which you feel, okay, I will never insert this in a website. But from a user's point of view, it actually looks good and is really, really helpful. So people have different choices altogether. Okay, so when you are designing a multimedia project, you need to ensure that you seek external guide as well, which could act like an oversight of the entire construction process. A good time accounting system for everyone working on the project is required to keep track of the time spent on individual tasks. Now, why do you need to track time? Otherwise, it will take you forever to create the multimedia project. You need to have a deadline. Okay, this is the starting date, this is the end date, meet the deadlines, done deal. Okay, not too much of unnecessary time spent. It's not that you work on a multimedia project for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, then you say, oh, break time, so let's take a break, and then you start watching a YouTube video for which you spend an hour, then another 5-10 minutes, and then you start looking at Facebook, which you spend half an hour. So half a time is just gone. So you need to work on a deadline. It is important to check the development hardware and software and review the organization and administrative setup. Okay, those are something additional stuffs. Potential problems that potential problems can be avoided by answering these questions. Is there sufficient disk storage space for all files? Is the expertise available for all stages of the project? Is there a system for backing up critical files? Are the financial arrangements secure? Are the communication pathways open with clients? First of all, you're looking at the storage. Storage as in like whatever things you're doing, can it be properly stored somewhere? Or is there sufficient space? Moreover, do you have an expert to ensure that all the stages of the project goes on smoothly? Because the expert will ensure that, if you have an expert in things seem to be more controlled, quality is more enhanced, productivity is enriched. Is there any backup for the files? Okay, so you need to ensure that backup is done as well. And is the financial arrangement secure? It's not that you're done with half of the project and then you realize, oh man, no money now. What should I do? Okay, let's just drop and continue with the new project. No, even if you are working for a client, you need to take in certain amount of deposit before trying to get things done. This is something that I had gone through when I was a university student. So there was a team of us, 2 or 3 boys. We used to make websites for businesses. So at very first, when we began, so nobody wanted to give it a deposit amount because they were too reluctant to trust us. So we would try to we'll get some projects on board and start making websites. So halfway down the line, and the client would tell us, no, we don't wish to continue anymore. We run out of funds. Okay, so that's a big time bummer. So what you gradually, when we started, when you started showing people our projects, that this is what we had done website for some big organizations. So when we showed it to them, then they started giving us deposit because they were sure, okay, these people will deliver the work. And moreover, you need to have a good communication with the client. Now, there are times, especially when you have some clients, they may not fully understand how the concept works, but they want things to be done. So in that case, it becomes your responsibility to let them know this is how things are done and this is how things will be. Working with clients, have a good system in place for good communication between the client and the people actually building the project. Control the client review process to avoid endless feedback loops. The last portion, this is something that we call it as scope creep or feature creep, whereby the client continuously goes and adds new features in the website or in the multimedia project. So you have to keep control of things. Now, how do you control of things? Okay, so you need to set a deadline for things. Okay, so this is what you want, and this is what you will deliver. This is what the client wants, and this is what you'll deliver. However, at times you may need to be accommodative as well, but it comes with a certain level of management between you and the client. For example, the client may say, okay, I want some changes to be done. How much time would it take? You may think, okay, it may take about a few hours, but I'll get it done. If it takes more than a week or so, then you might need to charge up. Develop a scheme that specifies the number and duration of client approval cycles, like I've talked about it. Provide a mechanism for change orders when changes are requested after sign-off. Okay, now what can be some of the mechanisms that could be done? Okay, in this case, changes, you might do changes, you'll charge for it. You might do changes, it may take time. You might do some changes, however, you might not accommodate major changes, just minor changes. So there's a mechanism for change order. That means there's a system for change order. Data storage, media, and transportation. Now, these are things that we've already talked over it, how you would store data, what are some different types of media, devices where you can store, example, CDs, DVDs, USB flash drives. Sometimes you have external hard drives and so forth. And mostly the most common one these days is on cloud computing. Okay, when you store things online. Excuse me. Feedback loops and good communication between the design and the production efforts are critical to the success of a project. The 4 fundamental organizing structures are linear, non-linear, hierarchical, and composite. The user interface should be simple, user-friendly, and easy to navigate. 3 categories of hotspots are text, graphics, and icon. The only project is actually rendering in the production stage. Now, if you look at our lecture slides, this again summarizes most of the work that we have, most of the lectures that we have covered up in the previous weeks. Okay, pretty simple and pretty easy. The thing about CIN535 is this: as soon as you would go over a few set of weeks of work, and then those things are not tested over the period of time. Okay, for instance, whatever you've done in Photoshop, whatever you've done in photop.com, and all those things in short test 1, okay, those things are not going to be tested in the next half of the semester. That means what we're doing now. So you need to put your focus on the labs that we're going through, for example, on HTML and CSS. After that, try to get the project done because it is 100% coursework in it. And because of that, this is how it's going to be. This is how it's going to be for CIN535. Now, for next week, week 13, okay, we will most likely not have the lecture class because I will be giving you time whereby you will go and attempt your short test 2 in next week class. Now, what I'm going to test in short test 2, I'm going to test you all that you've learned in HTML. Apart from that, whatever we will be covering up till tomorrow's class in CSS. So all those are going to be tested in your short test 2. HTML, CSS, total of 20 questions contributes 10% towards your coursework. Now, we have finished with our lecture notes, okay, and we have used about 45 minutes of the class. So I'll end the class right now, but what I wish for you to do is please go and work on your project. Okay, it's 20% towards your coursework. Remember that. You can get the HTML elements done, design your project well in a piece of paper, what all things where you want to be on a website. Look at some sample websites on similar types of organizations. Try to design the website again, and then try to get the HTML structure laid up. When it comes to CSS, this is where you'll, when it comes to CSS portion, okay, you can apply a little bit of things. For example, you'll have to use an external style sheet. So get an external style sheet done, link it up to the HTML page. After that, you'll have to do some form of formatting and stuff. So this is where in tomorrow's class, you'll learn a bit of work. But next week, you'll finish up with CSS, next week's lab class. And then the following week, your assignment is due. I will give you some more time. I'll extend it probably by the 7th or probably by the 10th of November. So in that case, you will have ample time to get a good website done. Please ensure, do not create a very amateur website. Now, how can you avoid that? Go on the web, search for some websites which look fairly similar and try to replicate them. If you're not so sure of some of the codes, go and search online. Everything is up on the web. Try your best to give in best shot and score 20 out of 20 in your project too. All right, everyone. So this is where we'll close off the class for today. So thank you so much, those of you who joined us. Now I know one or two of you will go on and off in the middle of the class because of internet connection, and I also know that portion of bar and portion of Lotoka is power outage today. Okay, so those of you who will be watching the recording later onwards, thank you very much for taking your time and effort. Till then, take care, stay safe. See you all next week. Should you have any questions, sorry, see you all tomorrow. Should you have any questions or queries, feel free to drop me an email or drop me a message in Moodle. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.